Today on Ag Etc. I take you to a central Kansas staple, Gillespie's Meats. I visit with new owner Josh Gillispie and learn the history behind this store and how Josh is keeping his uncle's legacy alive through their famous products. Then I have the pleasure of visiting with Miss Rodeo USA, who happens to be this week's Young Leader in Ag. Learn about how Brooke Wallace got involved with the Miss Rodeo Pageants and her aspirations for the future. Finally, curious about what you should be doing in the garden? K-State Master Gardener Coordinator Ward Upham joins me to cover timely issues and happenings in the agricultural world. It's all coming up on Ag Etc. Stay tuned.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
Highways 40, 83, and I-70 come together right here in Oakley. Roads that lead to businesses, to magnificent rock formations, to scenic vistas, to places where legends were made. Roads that lead us home. Discover Oakley, the gateway to western Kansas.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker, and today I'm at Gillespie's Meats, close to my hometown in Newton, Kansas. Gillespie's Meats is a longtime central Kansas staple. Established in 1989, Roger Gillispie founded Gillespie's Meats and was an entrepreneur at heart.
Well, my uncle started working in the meat business at 15 years old, and he kind of just carried it on from that point forward. And he ended up taking over Farrell's Market that was down on First Street in Newton, Kansas, and they kind of developed something called ham loaf, which I would assume most people in this that are watching this have had it, and it's just continued to grow. And then he left town when kind of the Food for Less and the Dillons and kind of ran the mom and paws out of all these little towns, so it kind of took his market down on First Street, and ended up opening this, just a meat shop up here in 1997, and it was just him and I was going through college then, and I just enjoyed coming to work here every day.
Roger recently lost his battle to cancer on April 8th and has left the legacy of Gillespie's Meats in his nephew's hands.
My uncle got sick, and it didn't take very long, and so there was a small group of us that wanted to help me out, and I didn't want to let this go. He kind of built a small empire, if you will, and I didn't want it ruined, so I decided to take the plunge here, and I'm glad I did that. So.
And ask any fellow Central Kansan what is Gillespie's known for, and they will undoubtedly tell you ham loaf.
Obviously our big seller is ham loaf, and then we carry something that's sandwich spread. Ham loaf, something, for lack of a better term, it's a pork version of a meatloaf, and I bet in my uncle's lifetime, between the two items, I bet you he made over 1 million pounds between the two. And we've expanded products a little bit. We've got some unique items with the jalapeno bacon hamburger and jalapeno bacon sausage that we make here. My uncle had numerous sausage recipes that we have continued, and kind of a Bible, if you will, back there that we follow.
And Josh not only had to contend with the challenges of taking over a well-beloved store in the community, he also, like every business, had to adjust due to COVID.
COVID, there was, to me, a couple of scares here. There was my uncle is leaving and never going to have a market here. Then you went through the COVID, and then you went through the meat shortage. And now we're kind of leveling back off to reality, which is great. I mean, we've done a little more advertisement. And first off, we were really extremely busy. We had customers from all over because they couldn't get their products in other places. Now the measures we've taken, disinfectants, we keep Germ-X here on the counter. Now we wear masks during when people are here, and kind of following the protocols that we need to, but a lot of washing hands, disinfecting constantly. So.
And even though Roger has now passed, his memory is never forgotten at Gillispie's Meats.
He meant a lot to me, and he meant a lot to this town, and he's touched a lot of people, and I mean, I'm not him, but I sure would like to carry on his tradition that he offered the community here.
For Ag AM in Kansas, I'm Britton Rucker.
No one plans to get sick or injured, but when life happens, it's important you and your family are protected. Kansas Farm Bureau health plans are there to provide continued health care coverage to meet your needs. Choose from a broad range of individual and family plans. And if you're over 65, we have options for you too. Learn more at kfbhealthplans.com or contact a Farm Bureau Financial Services agent near you.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
This segment brought to you by Farm Credit Associations of Kansas, lending support to rural America, and by American Ag Service, your DuPont Pioneer dealer.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker. Next, I bring you this week's Young Leader in Ag, Brooke Wallace. Welcome, Brooke.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Brooke, give us a little bit of insight to your ag background.
So I grew up a farm girl. I grew up riding horses. We had all sorts of animals. Both of my grandparents had cattle and farmed. So I was pretty much well immersed into that whole lifestyle. And I'm so thankful for that now in my life. And I see how much that, benefited me throughout the years. And it taught me hard work and perseverance and all of those great attributes that now have helped me in my career and all the activities that I've been involved in throughout my life.
So when deciding to college, Kansas State University was naturally your next step.
Yes. So I almost went to school clear out in California, and my home roots kind of reeled me back in, and K-State was where I landed. And, great ag school, great hometown feel to Manhattan, even though it was much bigger than my hometown and what I was used to. What throws people off, though, especially through my travels out throughout the U.S., representing rodeo is that I did not have an ag-based career. I got a degree in apparel design, so fashion design. And that was something that I just learned through my FACS classes, started sewing, and I loved it. And so that's why I pursued that degree. One thing that kind of links it all back together is that I love making Western wear. So showcasing the, cowboy, cowgirl look, the modest dressed and, something that's gonna last for years, your denim jean, your button-up shirt, all of those things. So that's kind of how both of my lifestyles really link back together, is that I'm designing for the cowboy and the cowgirl at the end of the day.
And if you couldn't tell by the cowboy hat, you are currently Miss Rodeo Kansas and Miss Rodeo USA. Why did you pursue that opportunity?
So being a rodeo queen has given me the opportunity to really showcase the Western lifestyle and promote rodeo, which is, the lifestyle of a lot of cowboys and cowgirls. And I grew up riding horses and in that type of work. And so it was just kind of something that came natural to me when I went to K-State and joined the rodeo club. And I was really busy with school. I didn't have time to compete in barrel racing in college. So this was kind of my way to link those two things and still be really involved. And throughout my years, I've held, I think, 6 titles now. And so about the last 6 years, I've been representing rodeo, and I'm proud to say that I'm the first lady from Kansas to become Miss Rodeo USA.
And I'm sure your year has changed drastically, like most of us have. How has that been, being Miss Rodeo Kansas and Miss Rodeo USA?
So last year in 2019 is when I represented as Miss Rodeo Kansas, and then I picked up as Miss Rodeo USA in January. And as we know, March was kind of the whirlwind month through, now and even more so. But at first it was hard. It was hard not to be able to fulfill my job to what I thought I needed to do. But at the end of the day, you just have to kind of look at it as half glass full, because, we can't change the circumstances we're in, but all we can do is, change how we react to it. So I've just looked at it in the most positive light that I can, and just continued to move forward. And rodeos are starting up. I've been on the road the last about 3 or 4 weeks, and then that's what it looks like it's going to continue into the next, the rest of the year, hopefully. So I'm just looking at it on the positive side, and I'm so thankful for social media and to be able to Zoom call with people, because that's how I've been able to continue to promote this lifestyle.
Absolutely. And to wrap up, Brooke, what would you say to someone wanting to pursue being Miss Rodeo Kansas and then moving on to Miss Rodeo USA?
It's one of those things, no matter what your goals are, no matter what your dreams are, I always promote the idea of dreaming bigger. So we set our goals and we set our dreams and our hopes, but just put that one notch higher. And that's going to push you to work extra hard to reach those goals, because if I would have never set the goal to be Miss Rodeo USA, I probably wouldn't have got there. And then, that realization came a lot when I had finally became Miss Rodeo Kansas. I had reached that huge milestone. And then to just look a little bit further, and that's where, becoming Miss Rodeo USA was a goal I set, and look where we are now. So it just goes to show that if you don't push yourself to try that little bit extra harder, you never know where you'll be able to get.
Absolutely. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
I'm Britton Recker, and this has been Ag AM in Kansas.
At Farm Credit, we partner with America's farmers who work hard each and every day to grow the food that we all enjoy. It's not an easy task, but it's an important one. Farm Credit is proud to work with farmers and ranchers, lending support in rural America.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses for with the fertilizer dollars that they do and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well on their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we're glad to answer it and work with you.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Britton Rucker. K-State puts out a weekly newsletter featuring timely things happening in the horticultural world. And with me now to run through and highlight one from this month, I have with me K-State Master Gardener Coordinator and the man who runs the Horticultural Response Center, Ward Upham. Welcome, Ward.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Ward, let's walk through July 7th newsletter beginning with fall gardening vegetables.
Yes, so that is something that we can do in Kansas. It's a little bit tricky to get these plants started, but they often end up having higher quality produce at the end of the season because they mature in cooler weather. So it's something that is worth the hassle.
Absolutely. And there are kind of staple dates when to plant certain kinds of vegetables people need to keep in mind.
That's right. For example, one of the first things you may want to plant are potatoes. That's only if you can find seed potatoes. If you just take them out of the grocery store, they're often treated to prevent sprouting. Also, if you just harvested potatoes, usually does not work to replant those because they have a built-in dormancy. So if you've saved seed potatoes from the spring, or if you have garden centers that still offer them, that's a good crop to actually plant starting about mid-July. You can also look at some of the crops like cabbage, broccoli, and cauliflower. Those are ones that you would probably want to start from seed now. Okay. And what I would do is just put them in a corner of the vegetable garden and get them started, and you're going to transplant them later where you space them out a little bit more. But that way, if you start them in a corner of the garden, you can take better care of them and make sure they get off to a good start. One of the things that is difficult at this time of year is just keep things as moist as they need to be in order to get germinated, in order to get started. The other thing to keep in mind with these types of crops is that if you have rabbits, you're going to have to protect them.
Absolutely.
And so that means you could cover them with a roof cover, but that may give it a little too much heat. What I would suggest is some sort of fencing. Again, if they're close together, you won't need a whole lot, but that will help protect them from the rabbits.
Absolutely. And when it comes to watering and fertilizing these fall vegetables, what do people need to keep in mind?
Yeah, really fertilization at this time of year is not really that important. You probably have enough fertilizer left over from the spring to get those plants off to a good start. We may have to side dress later in the season. In other words, once those plants are growing, you may have to give them a little bit of fertilizer in order to keep them going. And so that's something we'd look at later, but now just get them in the ground. And another thing to keep in mind is when you're watering as much as we're watering at this time of year, you may crust that soil. In other words, it may become hard enough that's difficult for those plants to come through. So what some people do is cover that with either a potting mix or vermiculite or something like that so that it doesn't crust and those plants can come up easily.
When we return, do you have weird-looking squash or melons in your garden? Ward covers why those might look a little different here on Ag Etc.
No one plans to get sick or injured. But when life happens, it's important you and your family are protected. Kansas Farm Bureau health plans are there to provide continued health care coverage to meet your needs. Choose from a broad range of individual and family plans. And if you're over 65, we have options for you too. Learn more at kfbhealthplans.com or contact a Farm Bureau Financial Services agent near you.
ValleyVet.com is your one-stop shop for your every animal need, from prescription meds, vaccines, equipment, and more for the ranch to the show ring. Shop ValleyVet.com for fast shipping and great prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
Welcome back to Ag Etc. We're returning with Master Gardener Coordinator from K-State, Ward Upham, here on Ag Etc. Ward, the next segment you had in the newsletter was titled Weird Squash, Cucumbers, and Melons, aka cross-pollinating in these cases. Kind of go into that.
Okay, a lot of people think that if they get a strange squash on a plant they put in, that it must have crossed with something else. Like if you have two different squashes, if they cross, then maybe you get something that's halfway in between. That is not how that works. That genetics is set for that plant. In other words, when you plant a certain plant, it's going to produce a certain type of fruit, regardless of whether it cross-pollinates with another one. Where you run into problems is if you save seed from this plant, from this fruit this year, and plant it next. Then if you had cross-pollination, you don't know what you're going to get. And so you have to be a little bit careful about that. If you have something where you planted and you get a fruit that you don't expect, there's several things that could have happened. One, it could be just bad seed. You may have gotten a mix-up at the company so that what you planted doesn't come true. The other thing that can happen is you can have a volunteer. In other words, you may have had fruit in that area last year and it just came up this year. But it wasn't because it crossed with something this year. That fruit is already set by the genetics of the plant.
Good to know. And individuals with fruit trees, what should those people be doing this time of year?
And so if you have fruit, you're probably going to have to be on some sort of spray schedule in order to keep that fruit clean. And so just talk to your local garden center or get one of our publications from the Extension Service. They'll tell you what to spray and when to spray and how to keep that fruit clean. If you don't have fruit, a lot of our fruit plants don't need to be on a spray schedule. And after that fruit is harvested, it's the same thing. You really don't have to spray. But if you have fruit, in many cases, you do have to be on some sort of spray schedule. The other thing that is helpful at this time of year is to get rid of any water sprouts, which are actually growth that comes directly off of the larger branches and goes straight up. If you have that, it's a good idea to take it off now. And also suckers. Suckers come from the base of the plant, either right around the trunk or from the roots that are some distance away from the trunk. Both of those need to be taken out this time of year. If you wait until spring and you take them all out then it just encourages more that coming season. Take them out this time of year, you're going to have less problems next year. Now, it all depends on the type of tree you have and how likely they are to produce water sprouts and suckers, and therefore some plants may not need anything at all. Others you may have to do quite a bit of work through the summer. It's not something you just do once. You may have to do several times.
But really be proactive to be preventative later on.
That's right. It's a good idea to take it out now, even though it's hot and it's miserable out there. Right. It's a lot better to do that than to set yourself up for a problem next year by waiting until spring. When we return,
Ward talks about blister beetles and some pesky creatures potentially poking around in your garden. Don't miss it. It's all coming up on Ag Etc.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
ValleyVet.com is your one-stop shop for your every animal need, from prescription meds, vaccines, equipment, and more for the ranch to the show ring. Shop ValleyVet.com for fast shipping and great prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Let us help feed your family.
Welcome back to Ag Etc. I'm returning with Ward Upham covering some pesky creatures in your garden. Ward, a concern for some gardeners are blister beetles. These beetles are notorious for stripping vegetables, especially tomatoes. What are some harm and control methods for these pesky guys?
Yeah, so they, as you said, especially like tomatoes, and so they can be different colors. They can be black or they can be gray. In the area that I'm in, the gray one is by far the most common. You can pick them off, but you have to wear gloves. They're called blister beetles for a reason. And so if you pick them off, you can wear gloves and you'll be fine. You can also use chemical control. There are a number of pesticides that can be used. The thing to watch on that is what's the waiting period between when you spray and when you pick fruit. Okay, because there are some products that will work on blister beetles that may have a long waiting period. And so just choose a product that has a short waiting period and yet is effective. The best way to know what to use is just to go into a garden center and ask. They're going to know the answers to those questions.
Absolutely. And going right into some pesky problems we have this time of year, you also went into budworms on garden plants.
That's right. So budworms are one of those insects that you get on a wide variety of plants. Sometimes it's called tobacco budworm, sometimes it's called geranium budworm, same insect, just on different plants. And so on those, they're a little bit more difficult to control. There are some things you can use that are effective, but you're probably going to have some damage. The damage you see on these is where you have flowers that just don't open, or if they do open, they're abnormal. And so if you see that, if you don't spray, they will come back. In other words, those later flowers are not going to be affected by budworm because there's only one generation a year. Okay. And so, but if you do spray, you can control these. Again, talk to your local garden center about what's going to be effective on these insects. In some areas, you may not have to worry about them too much. Other areas, that can be a real problem.
Absolutely. And once again, all this information is found in the K-State weekly horticultural newsletter. Where would you send people to find that, Ward?
So what I would do is have them search for Horticulture Newsletter, Kansas State University, and that will bring up a link that should go directly to our newsletter.
Thanks for watching Ag Etc. As always, I'm Britton Rucker, and I'll see you next week here on Ag AM in Kansas.
Join Ag AM in Kansas, everyone, Monday through Friday mornings on local stations throughout the state of Kansas, and every day on your favorite social media. Monday kicks off with Dr. Dan Thompson on Doc Talk, as he's joined by leading veterinarians and nutritionists in food animal production. They discuss current production challenges and tips on how to deal and prepare for those challenges. Tuesdays on Farm Factor, it is our friends here at KFRM Radio with interviews from top experts in agriculture. Wednesday, it is a little of Kansas history with Deb Goodrich on Around Kansas. Thursday, Britton Rucker brings us Ag Etc. This day is filled with agricultural research and ag happenings around the Midwest, including our new Young Leaders in Ag segment. We end the week with Authentic Ag and updates from your local checkoff programs. Make sure to check your local listings or like us on Facebook and Twitter at Ag AM in Kansas and on YouTube at Farming Unlimited TV so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching.